working on that you get a contract signed and you work under a contract. You're putting yourself at a lot of risk if this isn't the case. So if you don't get offered a contract, I would be asking for one, and minimum, if the client is not asking you to work under a contract, I would be giving them your terms and conditions and making them sign onto there, so that you're covered by something at least. They will be used if something goes wrong, so you'll fall back onto the contract if something doesn't work out. So it's an important document. Make sure that they're in place. So there's different types of contract. Most commonly, there's standard forms of contract. So the standard forms of contract, you've probably heard of them. There's JCT, which is the most widely used one, and NEC. These are standard form of contracts, so the clauses are the same on every job if they use that same standard form of contract. The terminology for the changes to the standard form of contract is called Z clauses for NEC and the schedule of amendments for JCT. So if they put one of these contracts in place, you're on a standard form of contract, which is considered fair for both parties. And the changes to that standard form are the schedule of amendments, or the Z clauses. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull up an example here just so you can see what it looks like. So when you get your contract, you can quite clearly see that this is a JCT contract. So this is one of your standard forms of contract. It tells you what form. So this is a short form of subcontract. There's different types of forms for both the standard forms of contract. So there might be one, a subcontract with design element, for example, and a longer form. But quite clearly, you can see that this is a standard form JCT contract. The other one I've got an example for. This is just a Redrow contract. This is a bespoke contract. This is Redrow's putting this together with their clauses effectively. So back to it then. What I would say about bespoke contracts is if you get a bespoke contract, it might be worth paying a little bit of attention to it, because they've put this together, so it might be a bit more strict in the clauses and might push a lot more down. It might not be as fair. Regardless of which type of contract you get, if you're not comfortable reading the contract and understanding it, you should be paying someone to do it for you so that you understand what you're signing up to. Never sign a contract without understanding it, whether you've gone through the work and understood it yourself, or you've engaged someone to help you understand it. Very important. One thing that is important, and the reason why you do want to understand contracts, is risk. So, and in particular, what risk you hold. So what happens with main contractors? Main contractors like to move risk down to the subcontractor. This is called moving risk down to the line, and it's very common. So they want to hold as little risk as possible. So they're going to push it down via the contracts down the line, moving risk down the line. When you hold the risk as a subcontractor, you should be pricing for it, particularly if it's very likely to occur. So understanding what risk you hold, understanding the conditions of the contract, and pricing for it accordingly is important. Contracts are negotiable. So you can negotiate contracts. And in fact, most main contractors will expect it. So one example, a very recent example for a client that I work with at the moment, got his contract, said 60-day payment terms, 5% retention. He went back to them and said, I'd like to discuss 30-day payment terms and no retention. The main contractor was willing. They still wanted the job done, so he got it. 30-day payment terms and no retention. Contracts are negotiable, and it's worth, if something doesn't work for you, it's worth asking if it can be changed. Most clients want it to work for both parties, and they're willing to negotiate most of the time. I won't say all the time, but most of the time. Very, very importantly, just because you price the job one way, so you price the job and you put your AQ and E, so all your assumptions in, all your exclusions, and you price the job that way. Just because you priced it that way and you've submitted it, it's really important that you make sure the contract reflects your AQ and E's and exclusions in your price before you sign it. So if the contract will basically supersede all preceding items, and that including your AQ and E's and your exclusions. So if you sign the contract, you can forget about your AQ and E's that you wrote with your tender. You will be delivering to the particulars of that contract. So super important, make sure that the contract reflects your price and your exclusions and your AQ and E's. I'm going to give you an example of this, a real live recent example that I've personally gone through. I'm currently working as a QS for a main contractor, a large main contractor, just on a freelance basis. One of the subcontractors that I am administering the contract for as a QS for the main contractor, they excluded something from their price. They're a tiler. They exclude latency removal from their price, which is quite standard to prep the surface from lateness before you stick a tile onto concrete. Now, subcontractor excluded it. Main contractor still put that the subcontractor was going to remove the latency in their contract. The subcontractor didn't review the contractor and they signed it. Now, because they signed that contract, technically they have to remove the latency, even though it's not in their price, even though it's not in their what they allowed in their price. So the contract is what they have to deliver at the price that it says in the contract. Now the contractor has to deliver it, and I can tell you that they didn't in this case. So the main contractor engaged someone else to do it on their behalf, and they were given a bill of 50K to remove that. So super important that you read your contract so you don't get stuck like this. Understanding the contract, super important, and making sure that it reflects how you priced and the exclusions is super important. Just because you haven't included something in your price does not mean that you don't have to deliver it. That depends on what the contract is, what the contract says. If the contract says you have to deliver it, you have to deliver it, even though you haven't included it in your price. Yeah, okay. So in summary, super important, you understand contract conditions before you sign up to them. And if you need help, you should be getting help before you sign it. Don't sign it blindly. Okay, that's it for today. Stay tuned. I'm going to have another live. I'll cover another impactful tendering topic. I'm going to do further lives on contracts as well and go into a little bit further detail. This one was a bit more high level. I've got a few things on my LinkedIn profile that you can look up. So I've got a freebie that you can download, which is called 7 Steps to Tender Success. So you can understand the overall tender process a bit better. There's a link on my LinkedIn profile if you're interested in that. I also offer a limited number of free calls each month to talk specifically about how you can improve your tendering. So you can also on my LinkedIn bio sign up to this as well. That's it. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.